You're listening to the Worldwide Freedom Broadcast Network. With studios in Eager, Arizona, broadcasting on satellite GE1, transponder 7, 7.56 audio, and over 700 FM stations across the nation and around the world. The Hour of the Time is also carried on WRMI, worldwide shortwave radio, 9955 kilohertz, Monday through Friday nights, 5 until 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
This is my daddy's station. I'm Pooh, classic radio like you always wished it could be. 101.1 FM, Eager.
Lights out on the hour. It is the hour of the time. Lights out for the curfew of your body, soul, and mind.
You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you have pen and paper as always by your side. Make sure that you remember my admonition. Listen to everyone. Read everything. Believe absolutely nothing unless you can prove it in your own research, your own investigation, in your own right. Now, when I say listen to everyone, read everything, believe nothing from no one, from no source, unless you can prove it in your own research, I mean including me, including your mother, including your preacher, your priest, your neighbor, your husband, your wife. This is the age of deception.
It is a big idea. A new world order.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is a big idea, but it is beyond the grasp of most people as to what it could possibly really mean. Everybody said, this is nice, the world is coming together. I've heard this on many occasions from people who, in all other aspects of their lives, appear to be at least a little intelligent. But when it comes to these touchy-feely, fuzzy, emotional, liberal BS, it appears that their brain just drains right down into their shoes and stays there for a while. How in the world can anybody say that the New World Order, our one world government, our world federalism, or the New World Economic Order, I don't care which term you use, it all boils down to the same mistaken conclusion, when there is absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, nothing for you to base those feelings upon. For instance, here in the United States of America, we have a Constitution. This Constitution guarantees us a Republican form of government. Now, never mind the fact that the Constitution is in the process of being subverted. And a lot of what the Constitution limits government to is being ignored, and many of the rights protected by the Constitution for the American people have already been stripped from us and thrown in the trash can. Never mind that, let's look at the document itself. It is a document that tells us exactly what type of government we are supposed to have. It is, in fact, the supreme law of the land. Now, supreme law of the land means that it is the final word on any subject. It is the government, ladies and gentlemen, or at least what the government is supposed to be. We can read that document, the Bill of Rights, and the articles in amendment thereto, and we can see exactly what our government is supposed to be. We can see what powers have been granted to government, how those powers have been limited. We can see what powers have been granted to the states, or because they have not been prohibited to the states, nor granted to the federal government, reside within the states, and if the states fail to exercise those powers or to claim those powers, then they lie with the people. We know what we have. We know what we had. We know pretty much where we're going, and we know what it's supposed to be, which at the current time it is not. Now there's no mystery in all of this, ladies and gentlemen. Why would somebody give up a document that guarantees their freedom, that recognizes individual creator-endowed rights of the people, and has set out clauses to protect those rights from being infringed upon by government or by anyone else? That limits the power of government, that creates opportunity. And in fact, was the document penned by our founders that for the first time in the history of the world ever truly set man free. Why would anybody give that up for some vague promise of some undefined, unoutlined, unseen promise of some utopian world government that is supposed to guarantee your well-being? Everybody thinks that it will be some kind of wonderful dream come true, yet there is no evidence of that. The fact that it's going to be socialist tells us an awful lot about what is coming, doesn't it? How can we tell? Well, it's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. We look at the history of socialism. We look at every country on earth that has a socialist government. We look at the ultimate extension of socialism, which is communism. We read the writings of Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, the writings of V.I. Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky. We look at the great socialist experiment that was the Soviet Union. We can venture southward from our southern border to Cuba, and we can see how that has worked. And so we know that the great socialist dream is nothing but a lie. We know that the great socialist promise is nothing but a lie. We know that socialism, when absolutely applied, does not work, has never worked, can never work, will never work. We know that socialism always results in loss of freedom and varying degrees of control over the population, which always increases as time goes by. These are not guesses, ladies and gentlemen. These are truths. And these are truths that anyone can discover upon the sloppiest, most basic investigation that can be conducted. These are things that we know. So why is it that a great number of the population keeps propelling themselves in that direction, which is guaranteed failure, based upon the theories and the philosophies of a man, Karl Marx, who was an abject, total failure in everything that he ever did in his life? He was a Jew who hated Jews. He hated blacks. It's in all of his writings. He was a racist. He made no secret that the purpose of socialism was the ultimate control of the masses. The man abandoned his family, couldn't write very well. Most of his ideas and writings were abject and obvious plagiarisms from Friedrich Engels, who also supported him because he was not able to support himself. Karl Marx never made a nickel in his life. He was a parasite. And maybe that's why his system of socialism so appealed to him. You see, it is a religion for victims. Socialism, ladies and gentlemen, is a religion for victims. And without a victim class, socialism cannot exist. Why do you think they're trying so hard in this country to make every person some kind of a victim of something or someone? Because they must have more and more victims in order to convince them that socialism is the answer, because socialism promises a daddy to take care of the children who are victims of the world around them. Isn't that true? Well, of course it is, ladies and gentlemen. How do they bring this about? How do they fund these tremendous projects and think tanks and black projects and covert operations and propaganda machines that bring this thought process about? Because this is not a thought process that develops naturally in the minds of any individual human being. It is something that is inculcated, brainwashed, if you will, through a process known as psychopolitics. Psychopolitics. And next week, we're going to be covering brainwashing and psychopolitics, the Soviet system, which is, in fact, the international communist socialist system of bringing about the future that they perceive they want the world to be. But all this must be financed, ladies and gentlemen, and how is that done? Well, that's going to be the subject of today's broadcast. I'm going to tell you how it's done. I'm going to tell you where that money comes from. I'm going to tell you what that money is used for. I'm going to tell you into whose pockets it goes, and I'm going to tell you why. So you had better be prepared with pen and paper and an open mind. And remember what I told you. Read everything. Listen to everyone. Believe absolutely nothing unless you can prove it in your own research, in your own right, in your own investigations. Remember, the truth is elusive at best. And if you depend upon someone else to tell you the truth without doing your own checking, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to give you plenty of documentation today from which to conduct your research. And there's much more out there. Much, much more. And I'm going to begin, excuse me, I'm going to begin years ago when I was just a young man and had volunteered for Vietnam in my vast stupidity and ignorance, thinking that I would be serving my country. Was not true. Vietnam wasn't about this country or the Constitution or freedom or any of those things at all. I received orders, ladies and gentlemen, to report to the United States Naval Security and Intelligence School on Coronado Island at San Diego, which I did. While there, I was trained for many things. One of which was to function as a Pacific Area briefing team member, as a member of the Office of Naval Intelligence. I was trained on external and internal security procedures. I filled out all the paperwork that was necessary for me to receive the highest security clearances that could be obtained. I went to special schools for booby trap identification and disarming. And then, for some strange reason, after all of that specialized training, I was sent to Vietnam to a place called Camp Carter, which was the headquarters of Naval Security and Intelligence in I Corps. At Camp Carter, I was invited into the commanding officer's quarters, and he asked me, "Cooper, how would you like to command a patrol boat?" Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's not every day that an enlisted man in the United States Navy is offered the command of a combat vessel in wartime. And so I did not hesitate at all. I said, "Captain, I would love to command a patrol boat, although I'm not sure that I have any of the qualifications that would be necessary for me to do such a thing." He told me not to worry about it and dismissed me. And within a couple of days, I received orders to report to the Da Nang Harbor Patrol commanding officer, and I did that. And I was told by him that I was going to be given command of a 45-foot picket boat. I had no idea what he was talking about. Never seen a picket boat in my life, didn't even know what one looked like. He said a load of them had just come in on a freighter, and they were moored to a buoy beside the Harbor Patrol Pier, and that I was to go down and go through all of those boats and take my pick of the one that I wanted. So I did that. I went through all the boats, and I picked the very best boat that was in the best shape, that needed the less maintenance and preparation for combat duty. And then I began to select a crew. Well, I served as a patrol boat captain with this picket boat in the Da Nang Harbor, which mainly was maintaining the security of the ships moored or anchored in the harbor, offloading, loading supplies for the war effort. And this picket boat was really something, ladies and gentlemen. I really had enough weapons and ammunition to do just about anything that needed to be done, anywhere that it needed to be done. And then later was transferred up to Qua Viet near the DMZ, where I served again as a patrol boat captain, only this time as on a river, with the Dong Ha River Security Group, which was another branch of Naval Security and Intelligence, as was the Da Nang Harbor Patrol. And up there, we participated in combat on a nightly basis. And that's no exaggeration at all. Every night, one or two, sometimes 3 or 4 boats on the river came under fire or brought the enemy under fire, and we participated in combat actions. While there, I earned the Naval Commendation Medal and the Naval Achievement Medal, both with the V for Valor. Our unit earned the Naval Commendation Medal and the Presidential Unit Citation, and a whole bunch of others that I can't even remember. When I left Vietnam, I went to the USS Charles Berry DE-1035 as an undercover agent for the Office of Naval Intelligence, actually ONI. And when I had uncovered what I was sent to uncover and made the arrest that I was instructed to make, I was then transferred to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet and assigned to the intelligence briefing team. At that time, I was a second-class petty officer. And when I was on watch, I was the petty officer in charge of the command center. And when I was not on watch, I served on the intelligence briefing team for the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet. I saw everything, ladies and gentlemen, of a classified nature that came into that headquarters. I assisted in the preparation of all of the briefings that were ever conducted for the Admiral and his staff while I was assigned to that command, and to high-level government officials when they came to participate in those briefings. While on watch, I was the designated SPCAT operator, which is Special Category Top Secret Messages. I was the one who encoded messages on the KL-47 and sent them out when top secret sensitive information or sensitive compartmentalized information communications were sent directly from the command center. Now, you have to understand that normally they're sent from the communications center, which was on a level below the deck that the command center was on. But when a message needed to be sent immediately, I was the one who did that. When top secret messages came in on the KL-47, on the teletype, or when they were sent up to the command center from the communications center, all top secret messages, all top secret SI, or sensitive compartmentalized information messages passed through my hands while I was on watch. Now, I was not on watch every day, ladies and gentlemen, so I didn't see every single thing that ever came in while other people were on watch. But during my watch, I did. And as a member of the intelligence briefing team, I had access eventually to almost everything that would ever happened that the Admiral needed to know while I was attached to that command. And one of the things that I learned while I was attached to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet was that most of all of the drugs that come into the United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, are brought in through the intelligence community, specifically under the oversight of the Central Intelligence Agency. I learned that these operations had been set up in the early 50s in order to fund black projects and intelligence operations that could not be allowed to come under the oversight of anyone in government or of the Congress. And that in order to bring about a peaceful world under the United Nations, vast amounts of money were needed for propaganda efforts and for subversions of the governments of the sovereign nations worldwide, including the United States of America. Now, this may be a little difficult for many of you to swallow, but nevertheless, it is true. And I am not telling you third hand or fourth hand. I am telling you of my own experience. I am an eyewitness. It is a fact. Everyone in the intelligence community knows this. Everyone in the Federal Bureau of Investigation knows this. Everyone who has ever conducted any investigation into the source of drugs that enter the United States of America knows this. Many studies have been made, many books have been written, many congressional investigations have been conducted, and they always end at the doorstep of the Central Intelligence Agency, without fail, without exception, always. Now, I want you all to close your eyes. Everyone listening to this broadcast, close your eyes right now. I'm going to give you a little simple demonstration in common sense. You need to know this, and you need to conduct this little experiment. Close your eyes, everyone. Lean back. Just let your Head relax. Relax your neck muscles. Close your eyes. And then adjust for a few seconds. And then I want you to use your imagination, just like you did when you were a child. And on the inside of your eyelids or in your mind, I don't care how you choose to do it, I want you to picture a map of the United States of America, including Hawaii and Alaska. People who never had anything to do with alcohol began to manufacture alcohol in their bathtubs because they could make a quick profit from it. It created a huge organized crime network that we have not rid ourselves of to this very day, that did not exist before Prohibition was created. And the drug war is doing exactly the same thing. What happened when Prohibition was done away with? The drinking of alcohol went down, ladies and gentlemen. Organized crime lost its biggest source of revenue. Speakeasies and honky-tonk joints all over the place went out of business. And it never stopped anybody who wanted a drink from getting a drink, just like the war on drugs today has never stopped anybody and never will stop anybody who wants to get high on drugs from doing so. And you can sputter and bluster and argue and say whatever you want. What I just told you is the truth. And that's what you had better learn to deal with. In 1989, Parents for a Drug-Free America was forced to acknowledge that it had been using footage of the brainwaves of a person in a coma to represent those of a person under the influence of marijuana. A lapse that they indicated they felt perfectly justified in undertaking, though they refrained from following Poindexter's example in quoting Churchill. During the campaign to reinstitute Prohibition in Alaska, a DEA officer claimed at a meeting in Anchorage that no one ever died from tobacco use. Other troopers in the bodyguard that surfaced during that extended campaign were the old gateway drug argument, the claim that marijuana grown then was more than 10 times as powerful as that grown 15 years earlier, and the insinuation of permanent sterility from casual use, all lies. And remember, I don't advocate drug use. Don't use drugs. Don't advise anybody to use drugs. But I'm not stupid enough to think that I'm going to stop them from doing it if they really want to. Because if the largest police state ever created in the history of the world, that has imprisoned more people in the history of the world than any other country in the history of the world per capita, can't stop them, who am I to think that I can do it? And who the hell are you to think that you're going to do it? After 24 years, you haven't done it, and in the next 24 years, you're not going to do it either. Every major episode of drug hysteria in this country, ladies and gentlemen, has been manufactured through the adroit use of lies and propaganda, combined with appeals to fear and racism to divide the nation, to create a crime wave that should never have existed for crimes that are not crimes at all, in order to enslave a certain segment of the population, in order to manipulate them so that another segment of the population will consent to give up their rights endowed by their Creator upon birth and protected by their Constitution, so that they can bring about the utopian socialist world, utopian BS lie. Many of you go along with it. Most people don't really think at all. They follow the lead of others who have done the thinking for them and are manipulating them and deceiving them into the world that they want, not the world that we want or that you want. You don't even know where you're going. At the turn of the century, folks, lurid stories of opium fiends and dens of iniquity, illustrated with drawings of slimy Orientals helping disrobe an innocent-looking Caucasian woman, helped lead to the passage of the first United States anti-drug legislation, which was the Harrison Act in 1914. The headlines of the time linked cocaine usage with race riots, while New York police blamed no less than 60% of all violent crime on the use of the drug and proposed deporters users to addict farms. And then these very same police officers, mayors, city councilmen, legislators, governors, and distinguished citizens sat around the drugstore counter drinking their dosage of cocaine in their bottle of Coca-Cola. What hypocrisy, what stupidity, what apathy and ignorance has brought us to this point, ladies and gentlemen. God gave us a brain. But like Rush Limbaugh, most of us choose to sit on it or tie it behind our back or whatever it is that he does with half his brain. I am alternately driven to hilarious laughter or profuse tears over this. Does it sound familiar? See, I was talking about the turn of the century, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't it sound familiar? Of course it does. Also familiar was the strategy adopted to combat dangerous drugs: blame foreigners. While Americans were consuming 10 times more drugs than the residents of any other country, authorities blamed supplier nations such as England and Japan, threatening to send the fleet to cut off the source of supply. Do you know that during World War II, the United States government paid farmers to grow marijuana? It was the biggest crop in the nation. All of the rope and line on Navy ships was made from hemp, marijuana. Many of the uniforms and pieces of equipment were made of woven hemp fibers. Most of you did not know that either, did you? Amazing, isn't it? Just absolutely amazing. You know that in many parts of America, huge, vast amounts of marijuana grows wild because during the war, that's where they had the marijuana crops. And they just can't get rid of the seeds. They just keep falling out and growing again. Now, who do we blame? Colombian drug lords. Are you kidding me? You guys really buying this story? These guys down in South America with a high school education, these guys are growing all these drugs, processing them, manufacturing the end product. They're transporting it all to the United States of America, and they have this brilliant, genius, logistic supply line that takes these drugs to every city, country, and village in America, and they're able to provide protection for this supply line and all of their people. And they're getting all of these billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. Are you nuts or what? How stupid can you be to believe that silly story? There's not even, folks, if you were to take all of the people and all of the industry in Colombia, you wouldn't account for 1% of the money that's produced through the manufacture, the growth, and the sale of drugs. There's nobody in Colombia who even begins to even distinguish themselves with even a minor portion of that kind of money. Why do you so eagerly, like if you really, it's like you're waiting for them to tell you these stupid stories just so that you can believe them. Or have we just sunk into the depths and degradation of insanity? Oh, it's the Colombian drug kingpins that are doing all this stuff. Yep. Well, if it was them, why don't we go down there and kill thousands of people in Panama to bring Manuel Noriega back to this country and put him in jail? Ostensibly for drugs. But what we did, folks, to Noriega had absolutely nothing to do with drugs. I can't tell you exactly why that happened, but it wasn't about drugs at all. He obviously did something that made Bush real mad. That's for sure. And by the way, I predicted the invasion of Panama just 3 days before it happened. Told the world on a broadcast of the Alan Handelman show when I was a guest that within 2 weeks we would invade Panama. 3 days later we did. I'm not going to tell you how I knew, because anybody who had any brains and had ears and was listening could have made the same prediction. The corruption, ladies and gentlemen, of present-day law enforcement had its counterpart as well. You see, investigations of the dope ring led by Arnold Rothstein just before the onset of the Great Depression revealed that the head of the U.S. Drug Police, established barely half a decade before, had been on Rothstein's payroll as a lawyer. Makes me just want to go get drunk. I can't believe this situation that we're in simply because we choose to be in this situation, because we have turned off the switch that activates our thinking process and we refuse to use it. Just refuse for some reason. In the 1930s, newly appointed head of the newly reorganized Federal Bureau of Narcotics, whose name was Harry Anslinger, campaigned vigorously for harsher laws to combat the, quote, new menace, end quote, of marijuana use. This was in the 30s. The government paid farmers to raise marijuana during World War II. But this guy was targeting especially the role of jazz musicians. You can interpret that as blacks. And mules from Mexico, which means wetbacks. And the Sunday Oregonian cooperated by denouncing, quote, the great American brain killer dance music, end quote. This was in the 30s. Can you imagine? You know, I play music from the 30s all the time, and everybody says, oh, that's old stuff. It's not, some people appreciate it, like me. Brain killer music, they called it. While much of the media, when not recirculating fanciful stories about muggles, orgies leading to death, waxed by turns sentimentally protective, dragging the children down with dope, and sternly censorious Hollywood actress nabbed with dope, her film career now closed by death stories. All total BS, lies, crap, crapola, pablum for babies who don't know how to think yet. The hysteria, ladies and gentlemen, drummed up by Anslinger succeeded in thwarting the movement to repeal the Harrison Act on the grounds that it was doing more harm than good, and led instead to the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act, which placed a prohibitive tax on the possession of hemp, and thus succeeded in outlawing constitutionally protected private behavior while being promoted ostensibly as a revenue enhancer. And to this day, ladies and gentlemen, so you think that drugs are illegal, and you think that you cannot legally possess marijuana? I'm telling you that that's not true. You can possess any amount of marijuana that you want to possess if you're willing to pay the tax to do it. Just like David Koresh could have owned as many machine guns as he wanted to own as long as he paid the $200 tax on each one of them. The truth is, he didn't even own one. Not one machine gun did David Koresh or any of his people own. You see, most of you don't know that the government just lies their head off. If you believe for one moment that what happened in Waco, Texas was about a machine gun, then you're about as far from reality as you can possibly be. Do you really think all of that happened and they spent millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to kill all those people and then burn their church to the ground because they didn't pay a $200 tax? When in the world will you wake up, ladies and gentlemen? It's beyond me. Hemp, folks, not so incidentally, was poised at that time to revolutionize the paper and textile industries as a cheap decorticator had recently been introduced, allowing the highly pulpy plant to be fully utilized for the first time. You see, the timber subsidiaries of the Hearst newspaper chain, which led the outcry against what Hearst first popularized as marijuana, would have lost a great deal of money if hemp would have been used to replace wood for paper. And you wouldn't have this big environmental thing and people driving steel spikes into trees and the lumber business dying. It would have just shifted over to the growing of hemp. You see, this was all a manipulation by powerful men with lots of money, with vested interest in producing wood pulp for paper. Meanwhile, the DuPont Corporation, folks, had just patented a highly polluting sulfuric acid process for wood pulp paper. And they had just told its stockholders that this process would account for 80% of its pulp shipments over the next 50 years. DuPont's chief financial backer was President Hoover's Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon of the Mellon Bank. In his role as secretary, he was responsible for the appointment of Anslinger, who later married his niece. Thus, the threat of competition was removed through the power of the state, at the same time as a further tool of repression was added to the arsenal of the control lobby. Don't you feel just a little bit foolish? Same thing is happening today, folks. Even as the last veneer of constitutional protection of individual rights is stripped away, and the provisions of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations as a treaty, which they say is legally binding on every agent of the government in the United States, become a dead letter, all purportedly in order to stop the use of certain officially disapproved psychoactive substances. The marketing of other such substances, far more deadly, proceeds apace, not only under the benevolent eye of Big Brother, but with subsidies provided courtesy of Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Citizen. Can anybody tell me why it's legal for anybody to go buy a bottle of booze and get blasted out of their mind anytime they want to? or they can smoke cigarettes, cigarette after cigarette after cigarette after pack after pack after pack after pack after pack if they want to, which causes more problems, more deaths, more murders, more beatings, more thefts than drugs ever could. I find it just absolutely unbelievable. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and God bless each and every single one of you, and I sincerely mean that. And God save this great republic.
All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, there's a loud knock on your door. Hey, honey, something's not right.
Throw out your arms. Things been passed through. We're here from the government. We're here to help you.
And I'm from the IRS with the power to tax. If you've got a complaint, send us a fax.
Get out of this house. Surrender your guns. Give me your gold. You better obey if you want to grow old. That's the good stuff and do what you're told.
Hillary Shalala, Reno Janet Dyke, reading the words of General Albert Pike, demonic founder of the Ku Klux Klan, engineer of the Masonic Master Plan. Pike said Lucifer is God across this land, and Clinton saying take the mark in your right hand. While we're all dancing to the drums of the Fourth Reich, Clinton's preparing it for another huge tax hike. Order out of chaos, depression, inflation, create the panic, then rape the nation. Crisis creation, incite black and white, program agitation.
Don't resist. You're surrounded. By the UN in white and blue, the ATF, the men in black, from the One World Order.
But it's not new. Iron Mountain, computer beasts, and cattle mutilations. Black projects, UFOs, and weird genetic combinations. The Nazi doctors didn't die? Come on, get hip. They came here with the OSS through Operation Paperclip. National ID, debit cards? Yeah. Vaccination biochip, milk carton kids, genetic engineering. Clinton says her health plans for you and your own good. Sure. And Adolf Hitler's Robin Hood. Masonic mind manipulation. Inciting riots, it's crisis creation. Biochip implantation. Vaccinate your kid for UN identification.
This is a test for all of us. So I have today just one simple request. A comprehensive package of health care benefits that are always there and can never be taken away.
Atmospheric, social illusion, media hype, planned confusion. Masonic religion, it's a liar. Got you praying for a Luciferian Messiah.
This is the voice of freedom. You're listening to the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network with studios in Eager, Arizona, broadcasting on satellite GE1, transponder 7, 7.56 audio, and over 700 FM stations across the nation and around the world. The Hour of the Time is also carried on WRMI, Worldwide Shortwave Radio, 9955 kilohertz, Monday through Friday nights, 5 until 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're in the Springerville, Eager area, Antoinette is back. The food is hot. The plates are full. The atmosphere is fantastic. Don't miss it. Go eat tonight at Los Dos Molinos. You'll be glad that you did. You'll have a good time. And boy, will you be happy.
This is my daddy's station. I'm Pooh. Classic radio like you always wished it could be. 101.1 FM, Eager.
We now return you to All Oldies, Most of the Time. You know, somebody called us and said, you know, those tunes aren't old. They don't have anything to do with rock and roll. Ain't it fun being human?